of my favorite people from CBS Sports, and I met her many, many, many moons ago when I first started at NFL Network, and she was spending all those years in the front office of the Raiders organization. She is Amy Trask back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Amy?
I am well. Thank you for having me. It is such a treat to join you, but let's not tell anyone how many years ago that was that we met, okay?
You know what? As soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to hear it from Amy. But it's true. We go way back. I mean, that's just the only way I can actually put it, and I cherish that.
I'm just teasing you. I'm honored to have known you so many years.
I've known you so long that you were standing right next to Al Davis when he gave me grief for where the championship team from the LA Raiders landed on the top 50 all-time list Super Bowl champions, and I'm like, I had nothing to do with this.
Moment. Well, I don't know if you remember that I was giggling when he was doing that, but
I was actually looking at you for a lifeline, Amy.
Sorry about that.
Guys, he came up to me at an owners meeting, like complaining, like any fan would, like, who's deciding where the LA Raiders are one of the greatest champions of all time? And I'm like, I don't do it. I'm just the host. That was great. So I could not help but notice your article for The Athletic and your opinion of what the Jaguars should do with Urban Meyer. I give you the floor to put it into words for this audience right now.
Well,
Amy.
I did have a strong position on it, and Rich, you have known me for all those years, and you know that I am not a hot take person.
Yes.
I don't have hot takes just for the purposes of having hot takes.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel strongly about this. When you own a business, you have to make a decision as to whether those you employ, particularly someone in a leadership position, is a good leader and does exercise good judgment. And in my view, this is just yet another instance of Urban not exercising good judgment. There have been a number of instances before this, and it was a glaring lack of leadership. I heard you mention that Mike Lombardi shared with you that he can't recall a time in his career when a coach didn't fly home with a team. And as I shared in that Athletic piece, I can't recall an instance in which a head coach didn't fly home with us either. Now, if there was an instance and I'm simply not remembering it, I am confident it was because of an emergency situation like a funeral or, a loved one who was terminally ill. But I really don't remember an instance in which a head coach did not return with the team. And A, that's leadership. But B, to all the people who said to me, oh, Aim, nothing goes on the planes. No, excuse me. I was on those planes for almost 30 years, and business does go on those planes. But again, lack of leadership not to come home with the team.
Yeah, and I've been on those planes too, and players sometimes go up front to talk to the coach. Sometimes the coach goes in the back. Certainly, if a team's heartbroken, like Urban Meyer said in the post-game press conference Thursday in Cincinnati, that his team was that there is business to be done or rallies to cry. These are things that to be done. But so the fact, though, that he stayed behind and then the video comes out of what he was doing while staying behind, even though that wasn't, we all assume, and I think correctly so, that's not the reason why he stayed behind was what we saw in the video. But, even if it was, then that would make a whole different story out of this. But let's put it together and just say, what you said at the end of that column is you think that Jacksonville should just swing the axe right now and don't even wait to see what's happening.
I do. And as I said in that piece, do as I say, not as I do is not leadership in my view. And I want to make very clear what I endeavored to make clear in that article and on Twitter, and I believe you and I are in accord on this. I would terminate him not for what he did when he stayed back. That's between Urban and his wife. That's between Urban and his family. I would terminate him simply for staying back, because I don't know how you lead a team when you're evidencing glaring lacks of leadership like that. Now, maybe he can reconstitute himself. I do believe in second chances. And by the way, I've been given second chances in life, and I worked for a team owner who gave people second chances. But and third chances and fourth chances. If I owned a business, I would have trouble now after the I think this is the third time since he's been hired that I have thought, poor judgment, poor judgment, poor judgment. And as a business owner, do I want someone in a position of leadership that I think continues to exercise poor judgment? And my answer to that is no. And you are absolutely right, Rich, of course, as to what goes on team planes. Never did I see, and there was never a flight home that I didn't see our coach walking throughout that plane and speaking to players, whether we were in a good mood or a bad mood, heartbroken or otherwise, meeting with players, speaking with players. Sometimes players would approach the coach. The coach would meet with trainers and the medical staff and talk about injuries. They'd start talking about the next week's game plan. But more importantly, that coach came home with his team. You know what? Let me use this term, ride or die.
Amy Trask here on the Rich Eisen Show. Well, what you just said, here's what might be the loophole in it, Amy, is the fact that, and certainly you with a legal mind as well, that to say that we're firing you, we're terminating you for cause, not the morals clause. And it was interesting to see Shad Khan use the word conduct in his statement, that we're firing you for cause because of this, that basically his response would be, well, I told the general manager I was going to do this, and he said, okay, even though obviously the command and control structure of hiring somebody like Urban is you hand him the keys to everything, and he's clearly shown that being handed the keys, he can crash the car. But wouldn't he be able to say essentially, and that's the ultimate problem with this, is that there's a command and control structure where the general manager doesn't tell him that's a bad idea, Urban. You've got to take this plane back home.
Well, you're absolutely right to point that out. And I did see Urban's comment in that regard. I've not seen anything from Trent. So, there's a lot to explore there. Did he say, hey, I'm staying back? And was he told, well, look, I think that's a really, really, really bad idea, but I don't have the authority to tell you not to. Go talk to Shad. I don't know what the response was. Was the response, okay, sure, stay back? If that's the case, you're absolutely right. There are legal issues and arguments to be made associated with that. Look, there's a dance that may go on here. If there's a termination, and I was teased today when I said termination. Someone do you mean killing him or just firing him?
No.
Of course, I'm using the legal word for firing. But if Shad chooses to terminate him, to fire him, there's going to be an argument, an arbitration over is money owed. And maybe they can settle that on a going forward basis. Maybe Urban says, all right, I'm partly responsible. Let's reach a happy medium. Let's not have an arbitration. But yes, all of this is going to unfold if, in fact, Shad decides to move on.
Amy Trask here on the Rich Eisen Show from CBS Sports, former Raiders CEO, right here on the show. And I think just once again, because, I see a lot of responses from what I've been saying here and what others like yourself have been saying is like, what did he do wrong, right? What did he do wrong? Like, and again, it's none of your business what he was doing and so on and so forth. And as you stipulated, and I would agree, that is true. It's what it implies in terms of what everybody can do on this team and what he, as an authority figure, can set as parameters of their conduct and how that has now been blown to complete smithereens. Chris Long, who's been in this business for a very long time, had a perfect tweet that encapsulated the entire thing earlier this week when he tweeted out that if I'm a veteran player in Jacksonville now, I am my own boss, is what he had to say. So how does this get put back together? Can a win Sunday truly help put all of this back together based on your knowledge about that special bond between coach and locker room, Amy Trask?
Well, I'm not sure that special bond exists in the case of Jacksonville. I would posit for you that there is no special bond right now between Urban and that locker room, and I'm not suggesting that you're suggesting otherwise. Mm-hmm. Look, I think Chris's point is right on point. How do you get up in front of a team now if you're Urban? Let's say you're going into the bye week. How do you say to your team, I don't want you to do anything that's going to bring any shame on the club? I'm a player, I'm laughing or I'm rolling my eyes. I want you to stay out of trouble. I don't want video of you floating around the ether. I don't want to see you doing anything that embarrasses the organization. How do you have one iota of credibility? Again, I'll point to the phrase that I used in the athletic piece. What you're saying is, do as I say, not as I do. And I don't think that's good leadership. And something that, you need to focus on, this is a locker room of men. Very different than college, where all the players are very, very young. In an NFL locker room, sure, you've got some young players right out of college. We drafted some men who weren't yet 21, but you also have men well into their 20s and their 30s, and in some instances beyond that. These are men. How do you do as I say, not as I do? You ask about what if they win. There's a phrase, winning cures everything. I don't believe that. I've never believed that. What winning is a great deodorant. Mm-hmm. And that's the phrase I've always used. Winning is a great deodorant. It takes the smell away from a lot of things. But winning alone doesn't cure underlying issues. It just disguises it.
Well, and how difficult is it to win if the trust on that front has been destroyed or considerably altered, Amy? Because, I mean, again, you're mentioning the bye week, which is in 2 weeks from now there, and that's all well and good. But it's just like in the crucible of a game when adversity hits and the coach has got to make a call about whether to go for it on fourth down or punt or kick or what have you, or call a timeout or manage the clock or anything, that doubt creeps in as to that person's, again, he could be, as terrific at that aspect of it as Urban has shown in his years of coaching. That one slip up, suddenly that doubt begins to creep into the mind's eye of a player during the action of a game. That's where I would also be concerned if I'm Shad Khan and keep a very keen eye on that sideline and the field on Sunday.
It's an interesting point you raise, and I don't know that I would look so much to players questioning an X's and O call, although your point is very interesting. What I would look to is this a coach, and I'll use a euphemism, that players want to run through a wall for? In other words, I've seen coaches during my career where players are going to just do absolutely anything and everything they can to run through that proverbial wall. And I've seen instances in which it's like, yeah, not so much. So, I believe football, more than many other sports, is a game in which emotion plays a tremendous role. It is a game in which momentum, born of emotion and which creates emotion, plays a tremendous role. Is that someone on the sideline for whom those players are going to say, yeah, I'm going to run through a wall for you?
Last one for you, Amy Trask, before I let you go on this Thursday. Based on your institutional knowledge of the NFL and competition committee and the way coaches think and what you might know about what's going on in the NFL right now, who ordered the code red on celebrations with the taunting emphasis? Who ordered the code red?
That's a great question, because a number of coaches have spoken out in support of the rule. I'm sure there's also phone calls going around the league saying, hey, could you talk out in support of the rule? Could you give a little shout out for the rule? I believe it emanated from the competition committee, but the way committees work and the league office works, the league office and committees work hand in hand. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but when you want to make a rule change or you want to put a rule up for vote, you go to the league office, then you go to a committee, then you go back to the league office, then you go back to a committee. So I'm sure a lot of people were involved in that. I love your use of the expression code red. That's great. And, my issue is as follows. Do I believe that people should do things that cross a certain line? Of course not.
Right.
But there's no way you can expect a player to play with emotion. We always say we want to see our players play with emotion. Well, you know what? When you play with emotion, emotion pours through. So, it was said in a Supreme Court decision of obscenity. I know it when I see it. And I think when it comes to, I think that was Justice Potter Stewart. Gosh, that was just a flashback from law school. I know it when I see it. I'll say the same thing of taunting. We know it when we see it, and let's not go too far in calling things taunting.
Yeah, no, Darren Waller was not taunting just because he spiked it on the bench. I mean, that was not a taunt, and it's so obvious it was not a taunt. And, obviously I have the benefit of, sitting on my couch and seeing that and, in the whole, caught up in everything. A referee might just throw a flag but that was ridiculous. That's not a taunt. He was not taunting. He was playing with emotion. What?
I said the same thing at the time. Of course, you probably said it to your audience the next day.
Yes.
I just said it to my husband. But I said, that wasn't a taunt. He didn't do it in someone's face. He didn't do it to taunt someone, to rub anything in.
Mm-hmm.
He was excited. He didn't put that ball near anyone. I agree with you.
I know. All right, Amy, thanks very much. I always appreciate catching up with you.
I always appreciate the opportunity to do so.
Well, and hi. That's how I'll say that at the end.
Hi, Rich.
Okay, we'll chat soon. That's Amy Trask. At Amy Trask. I follow her on Twitter. You should as well. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.